Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today is a very special guest. He is, of course, the current NWA World Heavyweight Champion, former three-time WWE Tag Team Champion, four-time WLW Champion. He is, of course, Mr. Trevor Murdoch. Trevor, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John, man. Thanks for having me on, bud.
Yeah, no problem. Obviously, you got a lot going on, but what's going on in your world now? You got the NWA shirt on. What's going on?
Man, I am busy as all get out. As NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, there's constantly people interested in wanting to take your title and wanting an opportunity to be World Heavyweight Champion. So my voicemail box is full. My emails are full. There's a lot of great, talented people out there that really want an opportunity to become world champion.
What did it feel like to actually win that title? Because obviously, you're trained by Harley Race, legendary eight-time former NWA World Champion. My God, the greatest wrestler on God's green earth. You were holding that same title that he held. What was the feeling and emotion behind it? Because you cut an awesome promo, and it was an awesome match and everything else. But what was the feeling inside?
Of course, beforehand, I was a bundle of nerves. You know what I mean? You sit there and you kind of go through a checklist in your head of, can I do this? I've talked the talk the whole time. Nick and I had almost 2.5, almost 3 months build up on this, if not a little bit longer, I think. And you get to that moment where it's like, all right, like the conversation, the talking, all of that's out the door. Now you've got to prove it, not only to yourself but to the world, man. And to walk into the same building that Harley had wrestled in so many times was so historic with that room. And to have Ric Flair there, to have my wife and kids there. I grew up. I was born in St. Louis. I started my career in St. Louis. I spent several years dedicated just to the St. Louis wrestling scene. So to have a lot of my peers there, a lot of my friends there, to see all of that was really like you couldn't have asked for a better moment. You couldn't have. I don't think you really couldn't have wrote it any better than what it was. In my opinion, it was true wrestling magic. Um, People come to see and watch good versus evil, and hopefully good prevails. And that's the amazing thing about pro wrestling is we can take you on a roller coaster ride, and if you do it right, at the end of the day, everybody is emotionally connected and is happy with the results. And that's what happened at 73, man. Dreams came true. Um, it was a flip of emotions too. I know I'm running on here with this question, but there was excitement and nervousness beforehand, and then when I won the world title, there's an immediate pressure goes on top of your shoulders because it's like, okay, now I am the world heavyweight champion. I am the top guy. I am the top of the mountain. I am number one. Um, Now what am I going to do with it? How am I going to make my stamp? How am I going to make my moment as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion? How do I do that? And that's where I was at that time.
When you look at it, like you said, you're totally St. Louis boy, WLW, Harley. It just works out perfect. Wrestling at the Chase, Billy Corgan, obviously the owner, very old school, very good fan back in the day, but obviously very good NWA owner. He's really making the tradition important, and to be in that building was so cool and so different because there hadn't been wrestling there, and I don't know, it was like I think it was 40 years or something like that. So it's crazy.
37 years actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just awesome to kind of feel that moment. Are you totally in line with that? Like thinking of Billy, like we got to go old school. We got to kind of, bring it back before we bring it forward.
I think here I'm gonna move my chair here a little bit here. Sorry, readjust. Um, the conversations I've had with Billy is the importance of melding, mixing both of them together. It would be silly for us to try or to not recognize our past and where we came from and where ultimately pro wrestling came from, because the NWA is the longest running pro wrestling company, a business in the world. Like we're the originals, we're the OGs. Everybody split off from us. So I know it's important to the NWA to not forget about that and to remind people about that. But it's also and for people to be familiar with that. Like a lot of these settings and stuff are settings and places that people remember when they were younger as kids, and they're passing that on to their children. We're but it's also important to remember, like, wrestling does evolve, and for you to be uh it's just like anything else, it changes with the times. So we also want to let people know that we're still a modern pro wrestling. We still tell, aggressive storylines. It's just when you see the men and women that step into the NWA ring, they tend to be a little bit more aggressive. It's a whole lot. It's a stiffer style of pro wrestling. Um, that's why you don't see as many of the flips and the big high spots and everything, because NWA, we lay the wood to people, and it's hard to do that and still be able to run 90 million different spots per se. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely. Another thing too is it's funny. JTG, who is no small man at all, he
Not
may
at
be
all.
one of the smaller guys in NWA. I mean, it's like you're big. Obviously, Nick Aldis is big. Tyrus is a monster. I mean, Pope is pretty big as far as just like a normal guy. A
Yeah.
lot of other leagues have smaller guys. You guys really have like the real Chris Masters, Tom Latimer. I mean, these are all big dudes.
We're very proud on the fact that we have grown ass men and women. Um, if you look, if you want to look at it from, I guess, an analytical standpoint, majority throughout the years, your top guys, your superstars, your guys that were putting on the best matches, were seasoned individuals. Were seasoned adults that had been through the business and perfected their craft, and they were able to give the people um, those great matches. Billy and the office of NWA, they all feel the same way, that we want to give opportunities to younger guys and give them options and stuff. But the core group of men and women that step into the ring for NWA are adults, grown men and women that have experienced life, that have I guess, stepped into the ring enough to know what they're doing, and they protect themselves, but also to be able to give the fans a different style match. Um, NWA and all the wrestlers that wrestle for the NWA really truly feel like we are the best at what we do. Um, and we're very proud of that fact, and we work very hard to use that to make us stand out and be different than everybody else. Um, we are very, very, very proud of the fact that we've just got a bunch of grown ass adults in there that know what they're doing and can put on a hell of a match for the fans.
And speaking of Billy, not that long ago, it seemed like that was more of in line with what he likes traditionally in his wrestling product. Like he's not to say those guys aren't great athletes to do the flips and all other
No,
stuff, but
yeah,
it's not really kind of what it's in line with the NWA and what you guys are going after. Like even with promos, it's not scripted. You guys literally at the podium go. It's like you may have bullet points, or you may have something you need to say or want to say, but it's not scripted and it comes off better promo wise. I mean, it's just a different standpoint of wrestling, more traditional.
it's a very unhinged, I guess, situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's I remember early conversations with Billy and again the officials at NWA. It's a sink or swim type of situation. You got to go out there. There's no music. There's no smoke and lights and stuff to kind of hide you. You're basically handed the bare necessities, and you go out there and you talk to the people, and you know what I mean. You be real, and if you're not those things, if you don't go out there and give them your heart, like, you'll see it. You know what I mean? There's been a few guys and gals that have failed, you know what I mean? And they've, need to maybe get some more experience and then come back and hone their skills a little bit better. It's a very sink or swim. I keep repeating that because it is. Every time I go out there, I've been with the company since it started Power. We're going on 2 years now. Um, it's you walk out there. I still have to prove myself every time that mic's handed to me, and that's kind of the rawness. That's what I like about it. You know what I mean? That's in my opinion. That's how you create magic. That's how the fans get the most out of it. It's not somebody in the back trying to, I guess, read a piece of paper and trying to maybe guess how the fans are feeling or reacting. Whereas for me, I'll go out there and I'll say things, and it's almost like a little fishing expedition for me. I go out there and throw out there a little bit of my bait and see what they're biting on, and find out what's working and what's not working, and go from there. Or if I'm just plain pissed off and not having a good day, and I'm legitimately upset about the situation, I can go out there and say that and not have to worry about repercussions in the back with the boss and stuff. It's his freedom goes both ways. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes he gets what he wants and sometimes he gets more than what he asked for. That make any sense?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I remember a while ago, like when Tim Storm first started feuding with Nick Aldis and they were really fighting over the NWA title. I was like, wow, this is like really, like you said, sink or swim. It's like you just throw Nick out there, you throw Tim Storm out there, like, I'm not that interested. Then they start cutting the promos back and forth, and this starts going longer and longer, and they're going back and forth with each week. I was like, man, it's like this is great buildup. I love it. Old school. Flair at the podium, Dusty at the other one, going back and forth, talking about their match. Stark 84, Stark 85, whatever. It had that old school cool feel to it. I was like, wow, that now I'm actually invested in these guys even more so than I was before going in. So I love that from Billy and just the NWA in general, because the promos can kind of sell the show like they should.
Well, and that's how wrestling works. You know
Should
what I
be,
mean?
yeah. Yep.
Everybody says, what we're doing is innovative and all the other shit. The wheel's not, the wheel works. You know what I mean? So why try to fix it or change it? You know what I mean? We do what we know works, and what we do, and we do it well. You know what I mean? We go out there to create an emotional connection with the fans and create a moment in time for them. Not just what we do in the ring, but like you said, with our promos and stuff. One of the things I'm proud of, especially being world champion, is I don't fit the mold of what I guess you would consider the basics of a world champion. You know what I mean? I'm not cut. I'm not jacked. Um, I'm just I'm a hard working country boy that is a little too stubborn to quit. That's all it comes down to it. You know what I mean? But what makes me happy is there's people out there that look at me and go, man, I can do that. You don't have to be, 6'6", 270 pounds, ripped, full, you know what I mean, and cut and jacked and be this muscle bound gorilla to accomplish your goals in this business. You can go out here and work your ass off and make the best of your opportunities and work hard, and maybe one day you can be world champion. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I'm no Dusty by any means. Never will I ever try to be Dusty. Never will I ever try to compare myself to Dusty. The only thing I've ever tried to do with Dusty is try to chase after what he's laid a path for all of us, and I've just tried to follow that path. And I feel like I'm the closest thing to the common man that we've had in a very long time. You know what I mean? I want people to know that you don't have to look like a superstar to be a world champion. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say it's almost like the Dusty Rhodes thing. Like he's been multiple time NWA champion. He's not Roman Reigns or like the John Cena or the Hulk Hogan body, so to speak. Not the like the big muscular like Harley even. I mean, he was in great shape and stuff, but he's not this huge Jack muscular guy. Jack Briscoe, Dory Funk. I mean, they just look like real men who were great athletes, but you don't have to necessarily be like that. Jacked up dude. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
a cool, natural look, the Greg Valentine-esque, where you're like, oh, this guy's just an ass kicker. Like, you know what I mean? Like that look to you.
Yep. And that's who I am, man. When I'm here at the house or when I'm out in front, out in the ring.
With that, do you think that there's like pressure of like, oh, guys need to be in a certain shape, and like obviously like everybody's in shape to a certain point, but do you think that there's pressure like, oh, the guys need to be looking a certain way or jacked a certain way to kind of carry themselves?
Yeah, there's, that's always going to be there, especially it's pro wrestling. You know what I mean? I know for me, I've definitely started working out more and hitting the gym more, and trying to drop more weight. It's not so much because of the way I look, because I'll be honest with you, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about how I look. I got a wife. I already impressed the one lady I needed to. She
Yep.
she lets me see her naked. So everybody else I don't care about. You know what I mean? I
Yep.
mean, I don't need
Yep.
to impress anybody else but her. And she's happy with that. But the focus more so with the gym and hitting more cardio is because I'm going up against some better talent. You know what I mean? I'm the world champion. So I need to be able to, at one way or another, keep up with those guys, and at the very least, make what I do, my strengths, even stronger. And one of those strengths is I can take a hell of an ass whooping. Again, I'll repeat, I'm too damn stubborn to quit, and it gets a lot of guys frustrated. And I really work hard on my cardio end of it, and that's another thing that really surprises guys about me is like how I can just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going, and so far it's worked out really well with me. I've been able to outwin them.
Yeah. So, what is your thought just on the Nick Aldis feud and kind of the build up to 73? Because to me, great build up. Almost thought you had two occasions where you may win the world title, get screwed. Nice old school style booking there, where it's like you tease, and then you pull the trigger at the right moment. Booking wise, just as far as like, okay, 73rd anniversary with flair there, with your history there. I mean, just meant more there than it would be in another place. But I love the build up to it because it was old school in a sense where they kept teasing you were going to win. It's like, nah, this guy's not going to win. They keep screwing him over. Aldis keeps screwing him over.
Well, and that's again, that goes back to the basics of when it comes to storytelling and pro wrestling. We look like we're innovative and we look like we're doing something new, when in all reality, a lot of the other companies are so far left that when we do something right, it just looks like, oh man, they're creating some new and inventive shit. uh, Again, I can't repeat this anymore. It's the wheel, bro. If there's a certain way of doing things, and we have enough of our history to look back on to see what works and what doesn't work, and we did that. You know what I mean? It was just like with me coming back into the business 2 years ago. It was the people that wanted this. Ultimately, if the people would have not gotten behind me and not really were very spoke and was very voiceful in their opinion about me, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, talking to you about wrestling or being world champion. That whole thing really kind of took its life of its own, and it was one of those things that just naturally and organically happened, and it's what was pro wrestling was supposed to be about, is that emotional connection, that feel good creating moments in time. My son coming, just let's just talk about me on a personal level.
Yeah.
I had my two sons, and my daughter couldn't make it, but my wife was there, and my 15-year-old son has been with me. I brought him everywhere throughout the pro wrestling business, so he has seen the lows and he's seen the highs. And that night, I created a memory with him, for him, and with him that he'll never forget. I can I can peacefully walk out of this earth right now and know that my son will always tell my grandchildren about that moment, or tell buddies about that moment, because even still to this day he still talks about it. You know what I mean? Uh, it was a dream come true, and we created a moment. Not only, hold on just a moment here. Hey boy, be quiet. Daddy's on a podcast. I don't want to hear it. Sorry about that. Got to do daddy duties.
Yes.
Um, but we created a moment there. You know what I mean? That not only my son but the whole world will never forget.
Man, That's got to be pretty awesome. Like seeing your dad is like the conquering hero in front of thousands of people, and they're all popping like crazy. I mean, that's a really cool moment.
He definitely was the cool kid when he went to school that Monday.
My dad is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Like he's the hero. He's the man right now.
Well, and he what made it really special too is the fact that he had spent so much time with Harley. Like his Harley made it, he was Pappy. He wasn't Harley, he wasn't 8-time Indian, but he was Pappy. Harley was at the hospital when my son was born. I got to hold my son before my dad did.
Wow.
Harley was at my wedding. Harley was there for virtually everything, including my son. So my son knew how important the world title was to me, and knew the history and the moment that how important that moment was. And it was important for him to not only see somebody he looked up to and cared about, Harley, but now seeing his dad holding that same world title um, was just a moment that most men don't get with their children anywhere. And it's a memory that my son and I will always have together for the rest of my life.
Very, very cool. I mean, that's awesome. And the Harley race connection is great. A few years ago, really was his last ever convention. We were in Philly, and he was set up next to. I brought in Ronnie Garvin, obviously former NWA World Champion in his own right, and Harley's there. He's in the wheelchair, but Leland had asked if help because we were set up next to him, if we could help get him in and get everybody situated and everything else. So Harley like turns to me, he goes, "Where are we?" And I was like, "Oh, this is Philly." And he's like looking around. He's like, "Still a shithole." I was like, "Oh my god, Harley is awesome!" Like he's cutting a heel promo on Philly, like still, and he's supposed to be the babyface. But it's funny. I was talking to somebody recently, like, "No, that's Harley. He'll always kind of be like that like stiff kind of heel guy." But I thought that was great. Like, wow, he's even heel in Philly now, and he's was it
That's
2018,
awesome.
whatever it was. Yeah, it was really funny. And then Ronnie Garvin, I said to him, I said, "Hey, do you think that you could beat up Harley? You guys are known as like two of the tough guys." I meant really in their prime, but he's looking at him.
Right, of course.
Harley's in his wheelchair, and he goes, "Nah." He goes, "I still don't think I could take him." So I was like, "Oh, that's hilarious." He's taking me as if it's now. I meant like in his
Right.
prime, but he was saying Harley probably would have took him, even though Garvin's got those bear claws for hands. But he said that Harley probably could have taken him.
I've never met a wrestler that wrestled Harley that has said, "Yeah, I could take him." You know
Even
what I mean?
Haku, I
Like,
asked Haku. Haku said no.
no, and Haku is the only other one that Harley would say, like, he wouldn't take him, but Harley would tell you, Haku would give me a run for my money. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That was the mutual respect both of those men had for each other.
I love that though. Like the two tough guys, they know they're tough, but they don't like flaunt it or like say like, "Oh, I'm kicking everybody's ass" or whatever. They just know like, "Hey, you're going to be in for a fight."
I've never met a badass who told me he was a badass before he kicked my ass. You know what I mean? Like I thoroughly enjoy when a guy comes up and decides to give me his run sheet of what he has done or hasn't done or is going to do to me. Because usually it's those guys that are probably not the toughest man in the room. Harley was one of those men that could just give you a look and you would know that you probably fucked up. That's there's not too many men in this world that have that power, but also have that power and is able to back it up as well.
Really, Harley is a legit tough guy, but also he put everything together to make himself a great NWA champion. When he's training you and you're like going through with him, what's like the best piece of advice like he's given you?
His Harley's biggest thing was, and he told me 100 times, is to make them believe, kid. You know what I mean? And that came down from when, as soon as you walk through that door, that curtain, you're on. You know what I mean? Everybody in the room is looking at you, and you have to remember that, and you have to go out there and give the fans 110%. Because if you don't, like, eventually, like, those fans won't be there. Like, that's his whole thing was, it didn't matter if there was 50 fans or 100 fans or there was 500 fans. Give them something to talk about and make them believe in what you're doing. So to do that, to get to that point, we would have to spend 5 to 6 days a week in his training center after we'd all had to work all day. Everybody had a shoot job. So you would go into training about 5:30 and start at 6, and training would end technically at 9, but we wouldn't get out of there till 10 and 10:30 most nights, because we just kept pushing each other and pushing ourselves, and always if Harley was there, we'd want to have a match and show him what we were doing, and for him to critique it or to have an idea to make it better. The great thing about when we were wrestling for Harley and training with Harley, he was running his own shows, his own promotion. So the first 5 years of WLW, we averaged between 78 and 80 shows a year. And for an independent, that is this is 2 years before ROH has even had their first show. You know what I mean? So to run 78 and 80 shows a year for the first 5 years is huge. So we would get to go to the school and work on that stuff and run 20, 30-minute singles matches, and then be able to incorporate that into the shows for that weekend, and really kind of use it as on-the-job training. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of guys didn't have that. And not only were we wrestling those 78 to 80 shows a year for Harley, whatever dates we had open, because we were Harley guys, we were able to fill the other dates that were open. So, on an independent level, it wasn't nothing for us for the first 5 years to average about 130 shows, 140 shows a year, because we were getting other bookings from other independents, because the other companies knew us as Harley guys, so they knew they were getting good workers. You know what I mean? We had Harley's stamp on our back, and so that automatically would get us into a lot of these companies, where other guys had to, either figure out other avenues to get in and may not get looked at the first time. All they knew is, oh, that's a Harley guy, okay. And we had a lot of pride in that. You know what I mean? Guys like me, Matt Murphy, Superstar Steve, Wade Chisholm, Dennis McCaws, Johnny Jett. There was a group of guys out of Harley's camp that we knew, like, we were the Harley guys. And so we had a lot of pride in when we go to the promotions and everybody's, those are Harley guys, and they'd ask us a lot of questions and get, just try to learn from us as well too. We liked that. You know what I mean? Like, we like to have that image, and we like those guys calling Harley and going, man, you guys killed it this weekend for me. Thank you. You know what I mean? Harley was, I wouldn't say pimping us out, but he would, other promotions would call him and go, I'd like to have this guy, and this guy. Okay, that's great. You know what I mean? I'll call them, and Harley would negotiate our fee for us to get us more money, because who's going to argue with Harley Race when he tells them, my guys are worth this, and this is what they'll get paid. And 99% of the time, the promoter's like, okay. That was a big deal for us.
With Harley, I mean, it's awesome because it's like a badge of honor. Like, you're a Harley guy. You know what I mean? It's like that stamp of approval.
Yes.
Now
you carried a lot of pride with it. I still do to today.
Now, you mentioned before, and then obviously you had retired at one point. Why did you retire? And then you kind of mentioned you coming back, but why did you retire? And did the NWA ask you to come back, or like was it Billy and Nick Aldis? Like, why did you retire, and then why did you come back?
It was what was it? We're talking 2019, 2018. Yeah, around 2000. I think it was right around the end of 2018. Harley had been getting really sick, and really slightly taking, kind of, the good Lord things were getting to a time where he wasn't doing very well health wise, and we were spending a lot of time with him in that aspect. So I wasn't focusing so much on my career. A wife. I've got a daughter in college. I've got a son going. At the time he was about the 8th grade. Had a 3-year old. Uh, it just felt like it was time for me to kind of start slowly fading out of pro wrestling. I use the phrase I was a round peg in a square world, um,
Hmm.
because I'm not. Again, I'm not your average, what you would consider what a pro wrestler looks like. You know what I mean? And I just felt like maybe it's time for me to start stepping away. And then when Harley passed away, uh, at the time, I felt like, okay, like that's the end of an era, because I was the first student at Harley's school, and now I am here at his funeral, carrying him as a pallbearer to his final resting place. And I just felt like, man, that's almost a little bit of a sign for me, maybe at the time, to say, okay, it's time to hang it up. No one will blame me for hanging it up. For a guy come from St. Louis and from a small town in Fredericktown, Missouri, I've done some amazing stuff. So you know what I mean. I really couldn't complain about a career. But at Harley's funeral, and this was some class act shit too. The NWA and Billy Corrigan sent 2 representatives. The current at the time world's heavyweight champion Nick Aldis, and the executive producer at the time Dave Lagana, and they came to the funeral to pay their respects and represent NWA, which I thought that's some classy shit, boys. You know what I mean? And I thanked them for that. And towards the end of the funeral, I kind of got cornered by both those guys and Nick. And he's like, so what are you doing these days? And I explained it to him, and he goes, you got, like, bro, you need to come on, like, come to Atlanta and do one show. Like, even if we don't have you wrestle, you can be a producer, man. There's no sense in letting your experience and your talents go to waste. He goes, but I think you're crazy for saying that you're done, but come to Atlanta. And it took him, a good 10, 15 minutes, because, I just didn't want to start something that I didn't think I could fulfill or give my heart to like I should. You know what I mean? But they pushed and pushed, and maybe Nick's kicking his own ass a little bit now. But I said, yeah.
Right.
I said, I'll come to Atlanta. And I didn't expect to wrestle. I was expecting to be a producer. The phone calls I had between the time that said, yes, I'm going to come, and me actually flying in, everything led towards me being a producer and helping in the back. And when I got there, the first thing Dave Lagana said was, do you have your gear? And man, I'm an old school pro wrestler. I bring my gear everywhere I go.
Yep.
And I said, of course. And he goes, okay, you got a match with Ricky Starks tonight. And that was my first match. And from there, bro, it just the fans really gave me a great reaction, and really made me feel good. And I walked through the curtain in the back, and Billy Corgan standing there, Nick standing there, Dave Lagana's there, and they're like, man, you got so much more in the tank. He goes, you'd be crazy if you stopped now. And they said, we're gonna have you wrestle tomorrow. And I said, okay. And it just just took off like that, man. Like it's one of those situations where, like, I've worked my whole career, and I've had so many opportunities that were put in front of me and then got taken away from me for one reason or another, or just some sort of horse shit, political backstage bullshit. Um, this felt natural and right and organic in every sense of the word, and from the day that I got my first match with Ricky Starks, a year later, I was NWA national champion. And then, I think it was within a couple of weeks from there, a year later from that, I'm NWA world's heavyweight champion. It's been a roller coaster, bro. And it's been so fulfilling and make me so happy that I can represent the NWA, and I can represent the blue collar folks out there that are working their asses off, that sometimes don't get what they deserve. At the very least, they know that just keep pushing forward, because there is the light at the end of the tunnel. There is a payoff, man. The cream does rise to the top. we just can't let, these obstacles beat us. And I hope that I give somebody some sort of encouragement, motivation, that are dealing with some tough shit in their lives and going through some struggles. At the very least, they can look at my fat ass and go, if that motherfucker can do it, I can do it. Come on. You know what I mean? And because I feel like, I know this sounds slightly cliche, um, but I feel like I'm the American dream, not Dusty. I'm talking about the idea. You know what I mean? Where it's like, yeah, it's not going to be handed to you. It's not. It's not going to be. It's not going to be easy. But if you truly want something, and you work hard for it, and you don't take no for an answer, and you keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, eventually you will accomplish your goals. You will make it, whether it be a promotion at work, whether it be um, having a relationship with your children, a better relationship with your kids, whatever it may be. Um, Sometimes the good guys can win if you work hard enough.
Great, and a great story too, because think about where you were and then where you are now, and how basically, Nick Aldis has been champion for over 1,000 days. It just seemed like the odds were stacked against you in more ways than one. Yeah, he's 6'4", 6'5", whatever he is. He's chiseled. He looks like he's unbeatable, and you come along as the American dream, so to speak, and beat him. So it's a very cool storyline. I really liked it, and kind of where you came to where you are now.
Right on. Thank you.
With you though, it's funny. Like if you go back a ways, like when I always think about you, I always think for some reason. Don't kill me here though. It's like the Dup Cup and the Dups, and like I always think like, oh my god, like so funny to think of like that, and then like no, he fits more as the NWA World Champion, but he was also awesome when he was doing the Dup Cup. Like you could kind of play both roles. I know that was almost 20 years ago now, but I
Right.
just always think about that. Like that's so funny that you're one of the Dups and playing that role and that character because it was so silly in so many ways.
It was, and that was what it was meant to be. Hopefully, this is another inspirational moment for guys in the business to know that you may not be handed some of the greatest uh, uh, moments in your life, but you go out there and you make the best of it. You know what I mean, and do something to create a moment and memories. So even if you're not in the main event, at the very least, the people can walk away and go, I remember what, they're talk about you, you know what I mean? And that's what the whole deal was being stand up was I knew I wasn't going to be world champion. I knew I wasn't going to be a featured player per se, but I could do something that the people would remember. And that's what I wanted to do. And just like anything else, I've evolved and been able to find myself in a better situation where now I'm the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and I'm trying to make that special and make that a moment too. I've had a lot of people ask me like, "What? How am I going to be different than Nick Aldis and as world champion?" And I'm never going to be as articulate as Nick when it comes to speaking. I'm never going to be as pretty as Nick when it comes to looks. God gave me a body for working, folks. I got a mirror. I know this. Uh, but what I am hoping to bring is a certain amount of brutality and aggression in my matches that we haven't quite seen from the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. I'm willing to take a shot to give a shot, if that makes any sense. I'm willing to stand in there and throw throw hands and see who the better man is at the end of it, who can take the most. That's where a lot of my, with me going to Japan and living there for 6 months and training over there in the Noah dojo, I'm going to bring a lot of that aggression to the world title, and that's how I'm going to stand out. Uh, will it will it be a good ending for me? I hope so as world champion, but again, I'm not afraid to get my ass whipped to make sure I win at the end of as strange as that sounds. Muhammad Ali, one of his biggest, I guess, game plans was to let a guy punch himself out. That tends to work for me. I'm a big guy, and I can handle a lot of pain, and I'll let a guy use me for for a punching bag for a little bit and do
Rope-a-dope.
what I got.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's just hope that, the guys that I'm wrestling don't figure that out. Uh, and we'll go from there.
With Harley, kind of mentioned him. He was the connection to the Noah Dojo as well, right? I mean, he's the one that kind of got you in there as well.
Yeah, they actually they actually came over here to the States and was looking for talent, and we had to go into our school and get in our gear while Masawa and Vader sat in these chairs and just watched our match with no fans or nothing,
No
and
pressure, just two of the greatest
none,
of all time. No
none at
pressure. Yeah.
all. Yeah, and then of course you had some of the Japanese young boys that came with them, guys like Marufuji, Kenta,
Yep.
you guys that we had been watching knew how talented they were. You know what I mean? So they came in and they picked a handful of us guys, and a lot of us started having tours over there, and they quickly realized that we needed a little bit more training time to adapt to their style. We were young guys that were trying to wrestle. It's funny, it's what works now and what's over in Japan now. We were trying to wrestle an American style in a Japanese company, and at that time, it just wasn't translating well. So a couple of the guys were chosen to go to the dojo. I was one of those guys. They had actually asked all four of us after the because we each had to go individually. So we were by ourselves over there for 3 months in the dojo, going to training every day, 500 squats a day, 300 push-ups a day, 150 bumps a day, 3-minute neck bridges. You had to do neck exercises. It was very strenuous and really toughened you up, made you a man. But they had asked all the other three guys after they got done with their stage if they wanted to come back for another 3 months. Out of all four guys, I was the only one that said, yeah, I'll go back for another 3 months. Because I knew physically I was never going to be a jacked up, cut up specimen. Over in Japan, as long as I was a big guy and I could handle myself and still go, I could be a world champion over there. So that's where I planned on making my career. So I was like, yeah, sign me up. I'll come back for another 3 months and do the exact same thing, and I did, and it got me in a great shape. You know what I mean? I was in the best shape of my life over there, and it was one of those experiences that I was like, I'm a young guy. I'll never be able to do this again. I might as well take advantage of it. Not to mention somebody else was paying for it, so why not? You know what I mean? Like, why not do it? And it turned out to be the greatest opportunity for me in pro wrestling because I actually came back and Harley got me a WWE tryout with about 3 or 4 weeks after I got back. And I had been up there and tried out before with them, and I was just there to collect $250 and eat some badass catering and be a fan, you know what I
Right.
mean, and see all the
Yeah.
boys. So when we got there to the tryout, I seen Chris Benoit out there doing 500 squats before the show, and that was his warm up. And I knew how popular Chris was in Japan, and I knew what a big fan of Harley's he was. They had a connection there. So I got into my workout gear and I slid into the ring. And, I'm fresh from the dojo virtually 3 weeks. So I'm extremely flexible. And I'm doing these neck bridges where I look like virtually the McDonald's arches. You know what I mean? And Chris
Yeah.
is looking
Yeah.
up at me. And I do these butterfly stretches where I have a guy stand behind me and put one foot on each knee and would take my legs and touch the mat. And it got his attention. And he came over and, he's like, have you been to Japan? And I was like, yes, sir. And I just laid out my resume, for like 15 minutes. We talked about Harley and Japan and the dojo and all this other. And he said, do you got a match tonight? And I said, no. He goes, wait right here. Just wait right here. And about 10 minutes later, he came back and he's like, all right, kid, they got a match. You got a match tonight. Show them what you got. And walked away like it was nothing. And it at that moment is when it got serious for me because I had been there. I'm not joking, 8 or 9 different times, and they had paid me no attention. I always got the good job, kid, pat on the back. You know
Right.
what I mean? But
Yep.
nobody ever said we're calling you or anything like that. Now I've got all the attention of someone that can make a decision for my life, for my career. And sure enough, I wrestled Rob Conway that night and had a great match with him. They invited me back that night to wrestle in SmackDown on that Tuesday, which that's when they taped it for Tuesday. They taped it on Tuesday, but aired it, I think, Thursday, I think it was. And I wrestled Rene Dupree and had a really good match with him. And I was stoked. I was happy. I was like, man, this is great. I made $500. I ate well. I was an indie guy, so sometimes you didn't eat the best.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I got back into the locker room. I'm changing, and Johnny Ace comes in the back, and he's like, I want to talk to you when you get done. And at first, I was like, oh shit, like what did I do? You know what I mean? Because nobody had ever came to like that. You know what I mean? Nobody important like that came to talk to me. So I thought I screwed up. And I ended up going into his office, and we were talking for about 10 or 15 minutes. And he goes, do you want a job here? And I was like, yep,
Yep.
And he goes, okay, give me your address and your phone number, and I'm gonna send you a contract and have your lawyer look at it, sign it, and send it back. And I'm like, oh, of course, I'll have my lawyer look at it. Oh, yeah, I'm an independent guy. I'm struggling to make rent sometimes. You know what I mean? Me have a lawyer. I'll go, yeah, of course. And sure enough, man, I was so happy. There was probably 7 or 8 of us WLW guys that were there that day, and we all got in the van, and everybody's happy for me and stuff. And I call up Harley, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and he's in bed, and I'm Harley, it's Trevor. What do you want? And I said, I got a job, and he goes, where? I said, with WWE, and he goes, what? And I said, yeah. I said, they offered me a developmental deal tonight. I said, I'm going to Louisville. And there's this long pause, and he goes, don't tell fucking anybody about this until you've signed the contract. And I was like, all the boys, Harley, are in the van. I got you on speaker, like they all know, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And he goes, can they all fucking hear me? And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, none of you cocksuckers say a fucking word until Trevor signed the contract. And of course, all the boys
Awesome.
respected Harley. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course, we would never do that. And, I was so blessed all those guys kept their word. You know what I mean? Nothing got out when it wasn't supposed to. And, yeah, that's that's how quickly it happened for me, going to WWE. Had tried 8 or 9 different times, planned on going to Japan, making my career there because I didn't think they had any interest in me. And as soon as I get back, as soon as I'm not looking at them, they want me.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Isn't that the way it always goes?
Yeah. And Johnny said that he wanted me down in OVW in 4 weeks. And I said, I have a wife and a girlfriend and kids at the time. And I said, I don't have the money just to pick my family up and move them to Louisville. And he's like, do you have, it's $5,000 enough? And I thought, yeah, man, I can run cheap. $500 would be enough, but I'll take your $5,000, And we're packing up, and about 2 weeks into us packing up, I get a call. They said they're going to bring me in and tag me with this guy named Lance Cade. I'm going to tag with Lance for two shows, and then the next weekend, Lance is going to tag with Kevin Thorne and see what Kevin looks like with Lance in the tag team, and whoever is the best team is going to go on the road. And I knew Lance had known Kevin from OVW, so I just assumed they're pals. So to me, this was just a technicality. You know what I mean? I'm just coming up to wrestle, and I'm gonna go back home, continue to pack, and go down to Louisville. And we had the two shows, me and Lance tagged, and we got to the back, and Johnny A stopped Lance and I, and he said, we're not going to bring in Kevin next week. Lance, you wrestled with Kevin down in OVW. Lance, you wrestled with Trevor the last 2 days. Who do you think you'd have a better tag team with? We need to know right now. And Lance, manned up and said, I think I got better chemistry with Trevor. I think I'd have a better team with Trevor. And he goes, all right, you guys are on the road. Trevor, don't worry about going down to OVW. And
Wow.
that next week, we're doing live events, and I am still living in the same town that, I never left Eldon. You know what I mean? I drove to St. Louis, which is 2.5 hours each way every week to fly out and go wrestle. So I virtually one night, and then it went from Harley. We had just thankfully had booked an Eldon show where I live at within the time that I was leaving, and Harley brought in Dusty, and I had a farewell match on a Friday, and my vignettes aired for me being a new tag team that Monday on WWE Raw.
Awesome. What a quick whirlwind. Who the hell knew that was going to happen? Kind of moment.
It's the classic being ready for anything at any time at any moment. You know what I mean? You never know when you're going to get the call. Just make sure that you're ready when they do. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's funny. I had maybe been a heel in my career maybe 6 months at that time, and I'd been wrestling for 10 years at that moment. I get up to WWE, and they asked me to do the one thing that I had the least amount of experience in, was be a heel. So I call Harley up, and I'm nervous. You know what I mean? I'm working for the biggest company in the biggest pro wrestling company in the world. And I explained to him, Harley, they want me to be a heel, and I got to go on TV and be a heel, and I don't have, I don't really feel comfortable with that. And the best advice he gave me was, do you know what you want the heel to do to you when you're a babyface? And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, then just do that. And it's the most basic response you can give, but it's the most honest and straightforward. All
Right.
right. I know as a baby face, I know how I want my ass. I know how I want you to kick my ass. You know what I mean? I know what works and doesn't work. I know what kind of reactions we can get. And so he simplified it for me. And as soon as he put it like that to me, I was like, okay, that's when, you got the lip and
Yep.
as a heel, I didn't want to be cool. I didn't want to be likable. I didn't want to be a cool heel. I wanted to be somebody that you could actually see in your town, in your city, that you knew he's just one of those guys. Let's just not mess with that guy. All right, let's just. I know 100 of them that they're just individuals that don't look like they're a badass. They don't project. They don't tell people that they're a badass, but they are. And everybody knows somebody like that. Everybody knows that one guy. I'm a tough guy, but I'm just not going to mess with him. That's what I wanted to project. I wanted to project the guy that you could see at home, but also let's just not mess with him. And I didn't want to be pretty. I didn't want to be clean. Physically, obviously, I wanted good hygiene, but I just didn't want to be the cookie cutter pro wrestler that everybody was used to seeing. I wanted to just be this vicious, dirty, mean, ugly heel, especially when you're standing next to a guy who's, 6'7", 280 pounds, jacked, looks amazing, and could move like a cruiserweight. I wanted to be the opposite of what he was, but still be the same, if that made any sense.
Yeah, perfect compliment. Yeah.
Yeah. And vice versa for him and me. You know what I mean? We really, sweet and sour is the best way I could describe it. You know what I mean? And it's, we fit that mold well, especially as a team, but you could also split us up and you'd still have two different guys that you could do stuff with. But when you put them together, you had this amazing tag team as well, too. That's what I always believed with Lance and I. I hated the fact that they had us run through the stupid little split up, when we were there. I was like, just let us go off to our own destination. So when you do need a tag team, you can, Power Ranger that shit up and, bring us together and we can move forward and then split us up and let us go in our different directions when necessary. But powers to be didn't see that.
They always do that, the generic, oh, we're gonna split them up kind of thing. They always. I don't know why they go to that well so much, but they do.
Yeah. It's worked, and sometimes it's worked, sometimes it doesn't. That's where that's one of the big differences between them and NWA is the fact that NWA trusts their wrestlers, and when they give an opinion, they listen to them and go, okay, these guys are the ones doing it and feeling it. We can feel it. Let's go with it and let's give it a try. And whereas the other place, everything's so micromanaged, and you've got 10 people telling the same person 10 different things, and that guy's got to decipher through all that horse shit and find the right way. And it just makes your job harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to trust the boys,
Yeah.
and not be so rigid, and it's got to be a certain way because you could tell on television like, oh, this isn't working. The guy's not into it. Certain things is like, man, it's like, why go in that direction? And the boss wants it. That's what he's going to get, even though the talent is not going to give it his all. So
Yeah.
either whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they're not going to give it their all.
Well, if they say that the greatest gimmicks, characters, whatever, is the guy or the gal. It's a little piece of them just turned up 100-fold. You know what I mean? And sometimes we're put in positions to do things that just we would never do. You know what I mean? And make no sense at all. It's hard to project that as being real and convince other people when you don't feel it, and you know what I mean? It's
Yep.
Again, I go back to the NWA with their guys and what they do with us is everything I'm talking about, I feel, because I'm the one that's coming up with it. I'm the one that's coming out of my mouth. A lot of guys will try to, they try to kind of, when they're going out there and they've got a point they want to make, they'll go through maybe a certain point they're trying to get across in the back of their head, and you'll see them walking through it in the back. Whereas for me, I can't do that. Like I can't project something that doesn't feel real and natural for me. So a lot of times, like when I cut my promos, there may be stutter steps in what I'm saying. It's because I'm saying it off the cuff. Like it's what's coming out of my mouth is just as a shock or just as new to me as it is to everybody else because it's happening in the moment. And to me, that's the only way you can create real magic is letting things progress and happen in the moment. Let them be real and organic.
With you and the WWE, was the high point winning the tag titles with Lance Cade? I mean, a few times, but is that the high point there? Is it?
Yeah, it was. I had a little singles run where I got to wrestle Ric Flair
Yep.
for headed towards the IC title. But that goes back to what I was saying earlier about some sort of political backstage horseshit. That was just randomly cut, and like the angle just got dropped. One week I'm wrestling Rick, the next week I'm not doing nothing, and Rick's wrestling somebody else. It's hard for a wrestler, for anybody, to get behind any company if you don't feel like that company is behind you and believes in you. And that's not just for pro wrestling. That's for everybody's day job. That's for the corporate. That's for a construction. If you don't feel like your boss or the company you work for believes in you and is standing behind you, and at the very least give you the respect to come talk to you and explain things to you when things change for you, you can't really give 100%. You're never really going to maximize that person's potential because they feel like whatever they do is pointless. And that's where it got for me towards the end with WWE was like, it didn't matter how good I could do something, what moments I could create. It still wasn't gonna get the attention or the appreciation, or at least it wasn't going to give me the opportunities to get bigger opportunities. You know what I mean? And I was
Yep.
like, when it was time for me to re-sign my deal, it was just, I just didn't want it. You know what I mean? And it was easier for me to say, I just don't want to sign it than say I quit. You know what I mean? And then 2 days later, they put out the message WWE has let go Trevor Murdoch, and we wish him well in the best future endeavors. I just wasn't happy. Not to mention, my son was 3 years old at the time, and everything that I was seeing about him, his first steps, first words, all of that was on video. You know what I
Wow.
mean? And
Yeah, it's rough.
was really eating me alive that I was working for a company that I wasn't happy for, away from my family, which didn't make me happy, and it just wasn't the trip I signed up for. And so that's why, like, everybody's, I've had a ton of people ask me, like, how come you never went back to WWE? I went back for one show, and that was just because I was in town and I was in the back, and they were, hey, listen, we need somebody to wrestle. I was Jey Uso, and I was like, fuck, I'll do it. But I never pushed to go back because I didn't want to be a part of that life anymore. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be in a situation where somebody was controlling my schedule 100%, all while I've got my children at home growing up going, I hope dad gets to come home this week. That was one of the common things, like, I would hear from guys like Arn Anderson, Ricky Steamboat, Mike Rotunda, even, Barry Windham when he was there for a little bit. They all had the same story with their kids and how distant they were to a certain extent with their children. And it was all adding up to going, man, this is not a dream. You know what I mean? Part of me was extremely nervous about leaving WWE, but the other part of me was extremely happy and relaxed and comfortable. Uh, just, just so I knew I could spend time with my family and get that right.
So as we head towards the finish, we hit the wind down here. What's next? I know you guys did some NWA TV tapings when you were down in St. Louis too, but what's next?
Right now, I've had a gentleman. We just did a special called by any means necessary in Oak Grove, Kentucky, and I'm not going to talk about it much here. I'm going to make a public statement about it. But Mike Knox attacked me at the end of that show, and I need to address him about that. But I'm going to end up. I've been asked to do that when I've got my thoughts put together a little more. He got handsy with my son, which is never a good thing when it comes to a man and his children. So I think that's something I'm going to have to tackle here soon. I have some some autograph signings coming up, but for me, it's man, I'm the world heavyweight champion, and it's different for me because I've always been the one looking for the fight. I'm always the one looking for the next best match. Now it comes to me. You know, I'm the one sitting on top of the mountain. I'm the one that has what everybody wants. I'm the world heavyweight champion. So if you want an opportunity, you really got to stand out. You really got to do something to prove not only to me but to the world that you can be world heavyweight champion. You can beat me. And that message goes not just for all the wrestlers, but I'm talking about all the wrestlers and all the other companies. Everybody keeps talking about this forbidden door. Um, I'm a Harley race guy. There was never a forbidden door. The door's always been open. If you think you can beat me, you think you can be the world heavyweight champion, sign your ass up to the ticket, and we'll go head to head, and we'll see who the tougher man is at the end of the day. Again, I'm not here because I'm pretty. I'm not here because I talk well. I'm here because I kick ass and I can take an ass whipping. And it's going to take a real tough man to be able to take this world title from me.
So obviously, you got a lot on your plate. You've got autograph sign, as you said. You got Mike Knox. When is the next NWA title defense? So should we expect to have any sort of announcement as far as that?
I'm not sure that comes down. That's the one thing that I don't have any control over. I can give my opinion, but that comes down to the NWA and Billy Corgan. I know that they've had several meetings about. I'm going to have a title defense coming up. I think that I think they've narrowed down to who my next opponent will be. I'm just waiting to hear back from them. I also have some other title defenses coming out on the independent scene, but I want to wait for another week or two before I bring that up. Those are the only things I'm in control of when it comes to that.
Right.
But when it comes to the off of who I'm going to be fighting next, that's the only thing, and I have no control over. And that's, I feel like that's the burden as world champion, because before this I could decide who I wanted to fight and who I didn't want to fight, whereas now I have to fight who they put in front of me. Like I can't say no. You know what I mean? And that's also what I want to represent too. You know what I mean? I know we've talked about Harley a lot in this, but that's who he was, and that's who I want to be. I remember hearing stories about him walking in to a WWE locker room and sliding his Halliburton with the world title in it, sliding it down the middle of the locker room to Hulk Hogan, going, "If you think you can fucking beat me, you beat me. Well, meet me out in the ring." And that's how I feel about it across the board. If everybody thinks they're a tough guy until they meet one, and that's straight up. That's real life. Um, you're going to have to go through hell and high water to take this world title from me. And again, if you feel like if you've earned this opportunity, I'm more than willing to give it to you. But that decision isn't up to me. Again, I can make suggestions and give my opinions. But when it comes to who I fight for that world title, it's up to the office.
I love that Harley Hogan like little mini feud that they had. They had some great
Oh
matches.
man,
Yeah, good stuff.
that's
Yeah,
Harley made sure to remind Hogan who the badass was in that ring, and
yeah,
we all got to do business sometimes. But just remember, who's doing business for who.
right. Absolutely. So, any dream matches though for NWA title? Like guys you could think of, like, man, I'd love to face this guy, or love this guy to get a title shot.
There's one guy that I've wrestled. I wrestled in WWE, but really didn't get the opportunity to kind of dig into. Is Dustin Rhodes. I want to
Ooh,
wrestle Dustin Rhodes for the NWA World Title. I want to see if I can pull the old Dustin Rhodes out and see if I can take him to the limits. And if I may be, I may regret this. You know what I mean? But I feel like if I can beat Dustin, a guy who's got so much history and tradition and so much love for the business and so intelligent when it comes to being inside that ring, um, I really feel like I will have done something in this business, especially as world champion.
man, that would be awesome. I didn't even think about Dustin. That would be great because a few weeks ago he's wrestling Brian Danielson and he looks like he's 20 years younger. It's like, oh my God, he's turning back the clock again, like he did against Cody. I mean, that'd be awesome if he turned back the clock against you and had an
Maybe if we
NWA title match.
maybe if we put it out in the universe,
Yes,
maybe if the universe talks about it enough, maybe we can bring these two companies together for one night and tear down the roof, tear down the house.
Tony Khan, AEW, Billy Corgan, NWA, make it happen. It'd be great.
Yeah, man.
So, one final question: can you explain the rules of the Dub Cup? Can you explain that to me?
No, I can't. To be honest with you, there was like 30 of the sons of bitches,
Oh,
and then we made up half of them the day of. One of them was like, I do remember, like, when I was there stand up, I had to be scared of midgets. I'm this
yes.
guy who's willing to take on the biggest guy in the room, but midgets freak me out. And I remember having a conversation with Vince Russo going over to Japan for my first tour. And I explained to him, 3 weeks before I was going to leave, and he was super happy. He's like, "Thank you, Trevor. Now we can write you out so we can write you back in when you come back." And um, I think we're going to have you scared of midgets. And I remember doing a promo next to a trash can, and this was my ending shot of stand up. This midget, Tio, I think it was, popped up out of the trash can, and I freaked out and started running into a locked door. But like where most people would run into it and realize it's locked, I just kept running back into it, trying to get out, and
Yep.
then the ending shot to me busting through the door and running out. And stand up was never to be heard of again. Um, there was, there was one where I could use a horsey head to something on a pony and hit somebody. It was some crazy shit. And the reason why they left the board up there was so that we could look, because there were so many rules. We had to actually look up at the board to remember what a rule was so we could do it in the match.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. Too much, a little convoluted there, Russo. Come on.
It was a tough day.
But before we let you go, where can we find you? All your plugs and everything else you got going on.
Guys, make sure I'm on Instagram and Twitter at the Real T Murdoch. I'm on Facebook. I'm actually verified there. I actually have my first shirt ever that I've ever had in the business on collar and elbow. Trevor Murdoch, and it has the saying with a sweet little picture of me. Everybody's a tough guy until they meet one. And I think it's a pretty badass shirt. Please go to Collar and Elbow and check it out, guys. And please buy a t-shirt. I'm very proud of it.
Awesome stuff. Great shirt, Trevor. Thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.